सुगतो लोकविदु अन्तरो पुरुषधम्मसारथि सत्ता देव मनुष्यानं बुद्धो भगवाति साक्षातो भगवता धम्मो संदिग्धिको अकालिको ऐहिकसिको उपनेको कच्छतं वेदितव्यो विन्याहीति सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो समीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो यदिदं चत्वारि पुरुषयुगानि अष्टपुरुषपुद्गला येषु भगवतो सावकसङ्घो आहुनेय पावनेय दक्षिणेय अंजलिकरणीय अनन्तरं पुण्यक्षेत्रं लोकसाक्षी Buddham Bhuje Dhammam Bhuje Sangham Bhuje. Beside this sutta, this is called Kandaparitha. It's a part of a sutta actually, called Ahina Sutta. And the background of it is that monks who had gone to forest were being troubled by snakes. And one of the monks got bitten and died in that process. So the remaining monks come to the Buddha and tell him that this is what has happened. And then advises them to practice metta towards the snake kingdom as a whole. And then they will know that you are not going to harm them. And then they will not harm you. So this is the Ahina Sutta. It's a part of Anguttara Nikaya. So I have taken only the chanting part of it. Before that is this story. And I think we can read only Pali because English will be similar, so you can understand. I'll just mention the background. These four Virupakhe, Herapathe, Chabhyapathe, Kanhagautamke. These are the four kingdoms of snakes which Buddha has identified. So he says you practice goodwill towards them. Then of course Apadike means one who doesn't have any foot. Dvipadike means one who has 2 feet. Chaturpade means one who has 4 feet. And Bahupade means one who has many feet. So he classifies the whole kingdom of earth in these 4 categories. And then the rest is that they should not hurt me and I will not hurt them. So let us recite this. It's called Khandaparitha and it is only these chantings. If you read the whole sutta, then it is a part of Samyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya called Ahina Sutta. Virupakhehi me metang erapathehi me Chabhyaputtehi me metang kanha gautahakehi cha apadakehi me metang dvipadikehi me chatupadehi me metang bahupadehi me mamang apadako hinsi mamang hinsi dvipadako mamang chatupado hinsi mamang hinsi bahupado sabbe satta sabbe pana sabbe bhuta chakevara sabbe bhadrani passantu ma kanchi papamagama appamano buddho appamano dhammo appamano sangho pamanavantani sirisapani ahivichika satapadi unnabhi sarabhu musika kata me rakha kata me prajta patikamantu bhutani soham namo bhagavato namo sattanam samma sambuddhanti. So he's saying, at the end he's saying, I pay respects to the Sattana means 7 Samma Sambuddhas which have been there. So these names I have written down. Upassi, Sikhi, Vesabhu, Kapusandha, Konagamana, Kassapa and Gautama. So these have been the immediate past Buddhas. The last sutta of Sutta Nipata today we will study. Sutta Nipata is also done. So you remember this section, Parayan Vanga is of those 16 disciples of Prabhupada. So this is the last disciple who is going and asking him the questions. So see how he starts. He starts like me. Jinnomasmi abalo vitavanno nettana suddha savanam na passu maham nasam momuho antarava achikha dhammam yamaham vijanam jati jaraya idvippayanam. Says jinno ham asmi, मैं बूढ़ा हो गया हूँ. Abalo, very weak. Vittavano, I become pale. नेता न में शुद्धा, आंखें मेरी क्लियर नहीं है, नेत्र सा क्लियर नहीं है. सवनम न फंसु, कान भी ठीक से सुनते नहीं है. माहम नसम मोमुहो अंतरावा. So ऐसा ना हो that I should pass away in this, like in the same being a puthujana or being a girlfriend moha, being a fool. Like I wish that I should not die like that. Achikha dhammam yamaham vijanam. So please tell me that dhamma by which jati jaraya idavippahanam, so that I can leave aside birth and death in this very world. So that is what this Pingala India says, the last disciple says.
Disvan rupesu vihanyamani rupanti rupesu janapamatta tasmatuvam pindiya appamatto jahassu rupam apunna bhavaya.
Disvan रूप देखने से रूपेशु विहन्य मन्य, दूसरों का रूप जो है मतलब seeing the bodies of others being afflicted. रूपंति रूपेशु जनापमत्ता, and the heedless people suffer. जो प्रमत्त लोग हैं, they suffer because of their रूपेश जो deform होती रहती हैं. Bodies are bound to be deformed, so people suffer because of that reason. Therefore tasma tvam pingya, so therefore you pingya appamatva, be mindful and be heedless. Jahassu rupam apunna bhavaya, so let go of the form, let go of all rupa, so that you will never have rebirth.
Disvana rupesu.
Next. Disa chattasu.
Disa chattasu vidisa chattasu vidham adho dasa disa
Himayo.
na tuyam adittam asuttam amuttam atto avinyatham kinchan mati loke achikaha dhammam yam vijnayam
Janyam.
jati charaya idha vipahanam.
So Pingya जो है is first reminding Buddha that you know everything, so you better tell me. So he says दिशा चत्तसो, चारों दिशाएं, विदिशा चत्तसो, और चारों बीच की दिशाएं, उद्धम ऊपर, अधो नीचे, दस दिशाएं, सारी जितनी 10 दिशाएं हैं, न तुय्यम अदिठम असुतम अमुक्तम, कोई ऐसी चीज नहीं है जो तुमने देखी नहीं है, जो सुनी नहीं है, नो समझी नहीं है। अथो अविज्ञातम किंचम अथि लोके, इज देयर एनीथिंग इन दिस वर्ल्ड व्हिच यू हैव नॉट अंडरस्टूड? He's saying that of course you have understood, so please tell me straight away. Achikha dhammam yamaham vijanam, so please tell me clearly so that I may know jati jaraya idavipahanam, I should be able to leave birth and decay in this world. So that is, they want to all become arhants. तन्हाइद पन्ने मनुजे पेख मान, सीइंग द मैन, मनुष्य को देखते हुए, पेख मान सीइंग देम, तन्हाइद पन्ने, सीज्ड बाय तन्हा, तन्हा ने उनको ग्रिप करा हुआ, पकड़ के रखा हुआ है। संताप जाते जरस से परते, एंड देयरफॉर दे आर टॉर्मेंटेड एंड ओवरकम बाय एजिंग। तस्मा तु हम पिंगया अपमतो, देयरफॉर पिंगया यू शुड बी not be heedless, be heedful. Jahasu tanham apanna bhavaya, so you leave behind the all desires, tanha, and then you will not be born again. So solution is finally given. So that is the 4 questions of Pingaya. So that ends Sutta Nipata. There is some interesting comment given here. I think I should read it. At the end of this, some comments are made. There, this gentleman, and there is an epilogue, Parayan Trupti Gatha, that this is the story of that 16 monks came and these 16 disciples came and these are their names, and Buddha answered their questions, they are all pleased to hear, so that's interesting. Then the Pingaya, this last old man, again praises the Lord about that he has taught us the way beyond, and goes on to say that. So then they go and tell this to their teacher Bhavri. So वो कहानी इसमें दी गई. Then Pingaya goes and praises Buddha in front of his old teacher, and then his teacher says, then why don't you spend all your time with this man Gautama, who is so wise and so full of understanding? This teacher whose Dhamma is the way things are, instant, immediate and visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects, and nothing else quite like it anywhere in the world. So why are you not going? So his reply is very beautiful. Pingaya says, sir, there is no moment for me, howsoever small, that is spent away from Gautama, from this universe of wisdom, this world of understanding. This teacher whose teaching is the way things are, instant, immediate and visible all around, eroding desire without harmful side effects. You see, sir, with constant and careful vigilance, it is possible for me to see him with my mind as clearly as with my eyes, in night as well as day. And since I spend my nights revering him, there is not in my mind a single moment spent away from him. I cannot now move away from the teaching of Gautama. The power of confidence and joy of intellect and awareness hold me there. Whichever way this universe of wisdom goes, it draws me with it. Physically, I cannot move like that. My body is decaying, I am old and weak. But the driving power of purposeful thought propels me with it without break. There was a time when, writhing in the mud of sands, I could only drift from one stone to the next. But then I saw some Buddha, the fully awake and free from defilement. So then, this concludes by Buddha exclaiming, Pingaya, other people have also freed themselves by power of confidence. His names were Kali, Bhadra, Buddha, Alvi, Gautama have all done this. You too should let that strength release you. You too will go to the further shore beyond the draw of death. Then Pingaya said, these are the words of a man of great wisdom. As I hear them, I become more confident this man is some Buddha, he has opened the curtains and woken me up. There is nothing barren there, his mind is clear and luminous. Everything accessible to knowledge is known to him, even the ultimate subtleties of Godhood. There are no more questions for the doubtful who come to him. The teacher has answered them all. Yes, I shall go there, I shall go beyond change, I shall go beyond formation, I shall go beyond comparison. There are no more doubts. You may consider this as mind released. So this is how the Sutta Nipata ends. Good.
There is this question from Rajinder-ji. Desire is the main problem. Can desires be classified to see that the country progresses and to strive for it? Would it fall into desire?
See, whether there is a problem with translation basically. In my new book I pointed it out clearly. The word tanha is translated as desire because English doesn't have a word to distinguish between wholesome and unwholesome desire unless you add an adjective. So in Pali there is a word which you remember we had discussed in Abhidhamma called chanda. Chanda is also desire, it is aspiration. And chanda can be wholesome or unwholesome. A thief also has chanda and a saintly person also has chanda. So the chanda is a wholesome desire and obviously without that nothing will go. Even our meeting here every morning is out of that chanda, otherwise why should we meet? So there is a desire propelling every action. So as long as it is wholesome, it won't become tanha. If it is unwholesome, it is very soon become tanha and bound us in that way. So there is nothing wrong in doing acts of service and doing other things because that is what propels us. Compassion will propel us to do acts of service, metta will propel us to do work of goodwill for others. So this, as long as it is not taken with a I am doing and self-view, perfectly fine. So we find in Mangala Sutta so many times, taking care of parents, taking care of relatives, taking care of friends, all that is seen as a part of the welfare of us. So there cannot be any doubt. Only thing is the words are not available, so we have totally different words in Pali for them. Any other question? So let us go to your presentation. भेज दिया आपने? कंप्यूटर से भी एक दो दिन लगेंगे इसके।
70 में चढ़ाई बढ़ रहा है।
हाँ 71% है इसमें चार्ज तो है
चार्ज बीच में बंद रहेगा दिक्कत नहीं।
सबने सुमेधा जी की टॉक नहीं ली। ये तो पढ़ती रहती है इनके पास किताब, इनको गिफ्ट में दी गई थी, वो पढ़ती रहती है।
कौन सी? द वेट
नहीं वो दी थी ना, टेक लाइफ कोर्स।
अच्छा साइन करके दी थी।
साइन करके दी थी।
काफी अच्छी। वहीं से तो आई थिंक हम लोगों ने एटलीस्ट अपने वहीं से स्टार्ट किया था।
मैंने तो उससे शुरू किया था, द वे इट इज। Actually, 4 Noble Truths. The first book I got was that small booklet, 4 Noble Truths.
तो प्रिंटेड भी है। जिनकी वो PDF
काफी तो है यार।
वाइडली अवेलेबल है।
हाँ सारे अवेलेबल है, सब अवेलेबल है,
बट जनरली ये जो 4 नोबल ट्रूथ्स वाला PDF है, दैट इज बिकॉज वाइडली स्प्रेड हो चुका है, तो सर्च करने में काफ़ी ऊपर आता है। बाकी बुक्स थोड़ा डीप सर्च करने में मिलती है। ये तो इनकी अमरावती बेटा जो
अभी जो दी थी,
जिस सर ने अटेंड की थी।
अच्छा
हाँ
वही में
आप लोग वहीं थे शायद।
हाँ, वीकेंड अवेयरनेस टॉपिक भी ऐसे लग रहा था शायद, Day 1 की Day 5। अच्छा मैडम की प्रेजेंस में रजिस्टर हो गई है, उसमें उन्होंने एक वो बनाया था ना, पावर पॉइंट शो बनाया था रिगार्डिंग
आप दोनों की फोटो है उसमें, लास्ट सेकंड लास्ट फोटोग्राफ
तो है एक दो जगह पर,
और जगह पे भी है।
टेकिंग फूड एंड लाइन।
सर वो एक मुझे लगा था कि एक पर्सन वाज सिटिंग ऑन अ बेंच रीडिंग समथिंग, वाज दैट यू? साइड से देख के मैं पहचान नहीं पा रहा था।
No, Sudhakar, it's not shared. I will share you after the presentation. So this was I was listening to this talk on YouTube. This came in one of the recommendations, and then I decided to put that in presentation. So starting with slide number 2, sense of stability versus insecurity. So we are, in general, we have this tendency to have this stability, or try to want or try to have this stability, and wherever we feel insecurity, we are more nervous or more uncomfortable. And many times in our experiences, we want the things to go our way. We want the certainty in whatever we are seeing or understanding. And whenever there is lack of certainty, for example, this re-mistral phase, the changes which are happening, they are beyond our control. And as then John Sumitra mentions that the factors, for example, happening in the present time, the climate change, the overpopulation, the wars, or the nuclear threats, or they are the leaders of the nations whom we possibly consider them to be more unstable. So all these feelings of sense of danger, fear, we feel threatened, we don't know what's going on, what will be the future. And then Vajan Sumitra says that with all these insecurities, with all these uncertainties we have, we can still have this awareness. Awareness is not trying to change the present or trying to wish that this insecurity go away, but it's really about knowing that it's like this and not knowing it's like this.
being content with awareness of not knowing is quite tough. Because we want to know, we want to be sure in our life. He says it so easily.
I don't know.
It's all right, you are aware, you don't know. You are aware things are uncertain.
Especially with the question of what happens after death. It comes into many of his talks, and he says, I don't know. What can I tell you?
I have not died still.
I have not died.
And yes, so the next slide essentially is on death. And again, there are multiple questions people have. Do we have reincarnation? Do we have rebirth? Some have the opinion that when we are dead, and some try to grasp on this opinion that we have heaven and hell, and based on how we behave, we go to either heaven or hell. But then Ajahn Sumedho reminds us to know that we haven't died yet, and we don't know what happens when this physical form dies. So there is this not knowing of what happens after death.
After death, why to bother about it? This pure that way, and there is no body.
People bother it a lot, actually. In their religious circles, that is one of the biggest things. People fight on the ideas of what happens after death. Some people say there is heaven, there is
after death, but they at present they don't do anything. I mean, लोग ऐसे ना हम लोग भी हैं इस समय कोई तरह नहीं करते लेकिन डेथ के बाद क्या होगा देखते हैं अब शरीर ही नहीं तो फिर सी में क्या है आर या पार.
So I think the reference to this question Ajahn Shah mentions, because possibly he being someone who is reverent, many people come and ask this question expecting that he will give them some certain answer that based on his understanding, and that's where he likes to possibly guide people of using this thing that there is this not knowing of what happens. So again, in this particular talk itself, Ajahn Sumedho mentions that if you just try to ask yourself this question, what happens after death, where will I go, and then when you ask this question, there is this silence, our mind goes blank, and essentially he wants us to he try to shows this skillful way to point us towards this opening to awareness. It's really not that he wants us to really find out when we ask this particular question that let's find out, let's ask ourselves this question, what happens after death, and let's really find out. And then if we really try to find, really try to push ourselves to find ourselves, then again we tie ourselves towards in the knot. But as Ajahn Sumedho says, that the focus is really not to find what happens after that. It's just that once, if you ask this kind of a question, what happens after that, and there is this not knowing, and then there is this gap, and pointer is to be open and aware of this silence and stillness which comes with this question. And I think after listening to Ajahn Sumedho, my understanding has been that possibly when we say that awareness is here and now, it is beyond words, but he always tries to push people to see it
then and there.
then and there.
During the discourse.
During
And
the
then he himself used to keep quiet for 2 minutes. And the whole place would be charged, with vibrations. And then he would say, "Acha, kya bolna tha?" Then he would say something.
I actually saw, especially in this retreat,
He would just speak.
in the previous discourses he would continue, but this one was where he would stop and
He just stop and
completely
stop.
go blank.
You would think, you could see that he's nowhere to be found there.
But he would pick up the same thread again.
Yeah, he would remember and then he would make a joke. And when he said unstable leaders, you knew what he is trying to say. So he just smiled.
Yes.
Now, this idea of being, they are actually translating anicca not just as impermanence but as uncertainty. You see? And that's a very powerful translation, very powerful meaning, because we are uncertainty से हमको बहुत डर लगता है. अनिच्छा तो अब हमारा वो हो गया, हाँ मालूम है यार बदलता रहता है, ठीक है, it's okay. The fact that whole life is uncertain, absolutely uncertain. So that is and to be able to live in peace with that. The mind will always be silent. If you're, that's why he says, contemplation of death. I think, आपने लिखा ना, it's not a kind of subject we discuss when we have fun and party. We don't want to be reminded of it.
Reading this book, Venerable Father on Ajahn Chah's life. There, I think the author was translating Anicca as uncertain. In most of the places, he translated Anicca as uncertain.
वो नुआंस है तो एक ही चीज, बट उसका इम्प्लीकेशन बदल जाता है ना बहुत. अनसर्टेनिटी मतलब कल क्या हो, वो भी वही अनित्य बोध, वो भी अनित्य ही था, एक तरह से अनित्यता ही तो है ना, मालूम नहीं क्या हो जाए. So we accept. हाँ, तो वही तो कह रहे हैं ना, अगर आप
To be content with Anitya is to be okay with uncertainty.
This itself is a very powerful contemplation, that if we can accept life is like that, that's it. Mind will be. That's what he's saying. You can be in a deep stillness, silence. You can easily see. अगर भय है मन में तो फिर तो साइलेंस का मतलब ही नहीं है. Then you'll be afraid and frightened. But if you have come to terms with death, that's one final thing. बाकी सारी चीजें तो कोई मतलब ही नहीं है. If one comes to terms with death, they will be at peace. There is no issue. Everything else is secondary. So वो आपको सीधा वहीं ले जाना चाहते हैं, that कहाँ अटके हुए वहीं देख लो. इसे अगर तुम इसका सवाल का जवाब ढूंढने लगोगे तो फिर तो माइंड विल गेट मोर एजिटेटेड. करते रहो, कैलकुलेट करते रहो कि मैंने पुण्य किए हैं या पुण्य नहीं किए, कहाँ जाऊंगा, यहाँ जाऊंगा, वहाँ जाऊंगा. There's no end to it.
On this punya and what happened after this, he was in one of his talk. He was joking about somebody who actually became a Buddhist after following his answer. I think it was not a monk, or I don't remember exactly. And he said that he still had this notion that what if the Christianity was correct, right? So he said that I believe both in Buddhism and Christianity just to make sure that I'm covered up after my death.
Neither Buddha is angry nor Jesus is angry with me.
अगर मैंने वो मानना बंद कर दिया और what if Christianity is right, तो मेरा मैं जब मरूंगा तो मैं बर्बाद हो जाऊंगा. He said so he believed in both just to cover up it after death.
But that is also fear.
So yeah, that's what he said.
People fear a lot about कि मरने के बाद क्या होगा. That is a big topic. वैसे हमारे यहाँ भी पुण्य वगैरह का जो मेनली रिलेशन होता है वो इसी से होता है, जबकि हमें वो उसको अपनी करंट लाइफ में ज्यादा लगाना चाहिए rather than
The key thing is trying to come to terms with uncertainty. very, very powerful thing. If you can come to terms with it, very powerful. बहुत profound है ये. If you can know that I don't know and be yet peaceful, it means you've really given up attachment to every damn thing.
So actually, I had contemplated this one sometimes. So in small things it is easy.
Yeah.
But as soon as things become the stakes are high, then it is very difficult to be okay with uncertainty. For example, I was when my daughter was ill. You keep on thinking and thinking, कहीं इसको swine flu तो नहीं हो गया, कहीं ये तो नहीं हो गया, कहीं वो तो नहीं हो गया. You can't be okay with uncertainty at that time. Yeah. It is extremely difficult. नहीं, जब आपने एक्शन ले ही लिया, फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने स्वाइन फ्लू का टेस्ट तो करवा ही लिया था, अब रिजल्ट आने में जो 1 दिन लगेगा 2 दिन लगेंगे वो तो लगेंगे ना, और उसमें भी माइंड तो सोचता ही रहता है. You've done what you could have done, but you cannot stop your mind.
Okay, coming to slide number 4. Again, when Ajahn Sumedho says that awareness is deathless, sound is silence, then again he questions back. He says that do you really need this certainty that awareness is deathless? Is sound of silence the awareness? And then we need this answer. We have this tendency to get whether it's yes or no. And again, what Ajahn Sumedho says that, but now we are dealing with words. You can't describe what's indescribable, but we can know. And I think the last line there is a correction indeed, that we can't imagine unimaginable, but there is this knowing of not knowing. Not imagining is like this. So there is this question from Shilesh, what is deathless here? I think Ajahn Sumedho uses this word deathless, awareness, pretty interchangeably, and essentially deathless points towards this unconditioned, uncreated, unformed. That's the pointing towards the meaning of deathless is, as I understand.
And awareness is the gateway.
Awareness is the gateway.
That's why he keeps on talking that appamado amritam padam. Awareness, appamado means heedlessness, mindfulness is the path to amrita, immortality or unconditioned, whatever. So the nearest experienceable thing is unconditioned, is awareness, which we can experience, and not getting worried about whether we know something or not know, whether we are doubtful or not doubtful. I mean, to know not knowing is a very, very profound stuff. That I know, I don't know, that's okay. But there is a knowing of it, and you be satisfied with the knowing of it. As intelligent people, we find it unacceptable that I should not know what is happening.
I think there is a lot of element of surrender.
Yeah.
Is there where we have to say that we don't know, but we trust more the knowing of this feeling than the answer of it.
That's why they use that word, Buddha for it. Buddha is awakened awareness.
Buddha knowing the Dhamma.
Yeah, Buddha knowing the Dhamma. You are nowhere there. Awareness is knowing the way things are. Finished. There is no notion of knower and no notion of doer. This is what Satipatthana ends with. Yavadev jnanamattaya satimattaya. There is only knowing, there is only awareness. Nothing else. And it's Sitoja Verati, then dwells independent. There is no need to no support. He doesn't need any support. Sache kinchi loke upadiyati. He grasped nothing in this world. एक था ना वो, तो उसमें इन्होंने एक डिस्कोर्स में एक लुंगपोर डुन या कुछ के बारे में एक डिस्कोर्स पूरा दिया हुआ है. ये वही है. अच्छा ठीक है.
So, there is this question by Ashlesh, then he also answers is that who is knowing the unknown? And he says just knowing, I guess.
Yes, that's right. There's no one knowing. That is the real catch. Consciousness is also a condition, but there is an awareness of that also. There is an awareness of that. So there is awareness behind this, but we are not in a position to come to that state of complete unconditioned awareness. But this is the path. Residing in the, are able to stay peaceful with what is, being just aware of nothing, being aware just of say, sound, or body, or whatever is immediately coming into awareness, no selection, no choice, then you are approaching that unconditioned awareness. अभी तो हमारी awareness किसी न किसी चीज़ को grip करके रखती है ना, whether it is sound of silence, whether it is body sensation, whether it is breath, it needs some support. So by practicing it, you come to a stage where no support is needed. Then there will be the experience of pure, unconditioned awareness.
And so in slide number 5, Ajahn Sutta mentions this helpful pointers which help in recognition towards this awareness. One of the exercises which he uses to direct people's awareness is to ask. He asks people to notice the gap between the words, and so if he asks generally to choose any particular statement, the statement doesn't matter. But when saying the statement, you can notice these gaps, and that's the thing where the mind is silent and there is this awareness. And again, he points towards sound of silence as a means, and one of the his favorite ways of explaining is space. He says that in general terms we just take space for granted, but without space nothing can exist. He uses example of this meditation hall and people sitting in space. If there was no space, this meditation hall couldn't exist. And then by mentioning this example, he says that if you have to notice space, you have to focus out from the individual things which are existing in space to just give this broad awareness of space. And that's the this broad awareness, that's the pointer towards just being aware without trying to qualify the things and grasping the things. And again, things like not knowing, non-imagining is like this. These all becomes the helpful pointers by Ajahn Sutta. So there is this question from Rajendra ji: is the phrase "sound of silence" not imaginary? It is just jargon of words.
It seems, if you're not hearing.
Yeah.
It seems.
So Ajahn Sutta mentions this sound of silence or nad, Brahmnad or nada as this high pitch sound ever-present sound which we can recognize, and rather than trying to qualify it as something, there's some problem in the ears, or it's the sound of blood vessels in the ear. It says that this ever pitch sound, if we just try to tune to this sound, our thinking mind stops, and we just open up to what's present here and now. And the idea is not to really grasp sound of silence as something unconditioned, but just to see this means to just open up to here and now.
When you sit silently, there is a sound which is heard, which is not a sound from ears. You can close your ears, still you will hear it.
If you close your ear, you will
hear
louder.
it still louder. And there's that cosmic hum which is called, but whatever it is, there is a sound which is being heard continuously by me for the last 20 years. You sit and you're hearing sound, and you can use that as a kushalapaya for shifting your attention away from the world. You can talk, you can speak, you can see, and be aware of it. So that gives you an anchor in the away from the world. It doesn't attack. The world does not kind of overwhelm you then if you are aware of it.
You are aware of it.
Yeah, you are aware of it constantly, all the time, round the clock. Even when you're moving in the train with huge noise, you can be aware of it. So it's not a fiction. It's not a fiction, therefore.
In yoga also, this is called Brahmanad.
There are everywhere. In Nanak Vani, in
Anahat is also the same.
Yeah, in Mahayana, and everywhere they talk of it in different names. Alag alag naam. Nanak Vani mein bhi aata hai, in Kabir Vani mein, everywhere. In all mystic literature, you will find that Nad word used.
But sir, is Anahat Nad same as sound?
Another Nad is actually same because it is uncreated,
Right.
which is limitless. Adni, it's always there. Nad by itself means sound, but Anad Nad means uncreated sound. It's not heard through ears. स्टेज की बात नहीं, तो किसी किसी को आ जाती है, तो काफी लोगों को आ जाती है. If you are not, one has to be just mindful.
दीपक का बड़ा अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस है इसका. You want to hear that? मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा था वो. Sound of silence का.
बताओ ना.
मेरे को तो सर actually I started to hear it very lately after coming to these sessions, but he has been hearing it for decades.
Yeah. So I actually used to get puzzled that what is this humming sound coming in the ear, and many times I used to feel that possibly there is some problem in my ears. And once I really,
in fact, doctors.
Yeah, he went to a doctor actually.
He says
during college days, right?
There is a proper name for it. Tinnitus कहते हैं इसको. यानी दवाइयाँ दी थी. होम्योपैथ के पास में गया था. होम्योपैथी भी मैंने बुक पढ़ी. फिर वो जब मैं ध्यान करता था कंटिन्यूअसली, अरे क्या ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन आ गया है. नो इट बिकेम अ बिग प्रॉब्लम कि ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन, क्यों हमको तो ये लगता था संवेदना के सिवा तो कुछ देखना ही नहीं है, तो ये तो बड़ा ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन है. फिर मुझे लगता था यार, मैं फिर प्रोजेक्शन हो रहा था तो मुझे लगता है मुझे साउंड भी सुनाई दे रही है, मुझे पिक्चर भी दिखाई दे रही है, मुझे समझ में मालूम पड़ती है करूँ तो करूँ क्या. Used to be a big issue for quite some time.
You were in college, right?
I was in Bangalore first job.
Yeah.
जॉब में.
Yeah.
But must have been frightened. क्या हो गया?
He went to the doctor actually.
Yeah, I was a little conscious of is there some problem with the ears, whether I should get them.
The doctor ने क्या कहा?
See, actually, doctor took it very methodically, and he just said, take this medicines, don't eat anything, don't drink anything cold, don't take fruits, and it'll be fine. try to ask him more questions. He says, "ठीक है," and he just showed me away. But it remained, and there was some botheration, but not that much. But when when I read this book, Sound of Silence, or listened to talk, I think things became clear. So Sudhakar has.
ये तो ट्यूमर तक की बात कह रही थी, ब्रेन में ट्यूमर भी हो सकता है.
डॉक्टर ने
I got all kinds of checks. अब उन दिनों कैट वैट नहीं था ना, लॉन्ग बैक कैट स्कैन नहीं था. नहीं उसने सुर ने कहा था ना, उन दिनों कैट स्कैन होता नहीं था, तो फिर वो कान का टेस्ट करते थे, क्योंकि मुझे वर्टाइगो भी हो रहा था ना साथ साथ, तो there was quite a bit of problem. So everything stays, vertigo also stays, sound also stays, and the body is also still staying here. Never know what's going on.
So Sudhakar wants to mention his experience that in general we tune to the sound of silence to stop the thinking, but to him it happens other way. When the thinking stops, the sound of silence is heard.
Yeah.
And then Silesh also mentions that it's always there if you can just quieten your mind.
And the frequency of it changes with the state of the mind. I don't know whether you people have noticed it. But the frequency of that sound changes with the state of the mind. When and with the place, so I can figure out if you go to a meditation place, there will be different sound altogether than if you go to a hospital or if you go to a place where dance drama is going on. And when you meditate deeply, then you get a totally calm and quiet sound. It's influenced by surroundings, influenced by my state of mind. That's my experience. So both of them create a khichdi and create some sound. But it's always a high pitch sound which is going on and on and on. For all you know, it could be something wrong in the brain. So right. But so many of us getting brain wrong is quite interesting.
amazing.
So Rajendra C is saying that if you call it nada, then it is classified sound. Gradually, as I age, I will not be able to hear many sounds which get converted into silence for me. But that does not cease to be called
Silence.
silence.
It's not a question of not hearing, it is actually acute hearing. It's not not hearing. It's not nad, it is a bird. Anad nad is the word used, which is uncreated sound. So it sound looks like it feels like a sound, but it's not a sound there. There's no sound here which is there. You can be in a totally silenced chamber, still that sound is there. So it is attributed generally by the theistic traditions to the cosmic hum. So the Mahayana people say it is the Avalokiteshwara's.
So it's there in Mahamaya.
Yeah.
Because Jan Sumedho was also puzzled because it was not there in
somebody
Buddhism.
somebody told him that it is there in Hinduism, then he said in some Mahayana, because they keep on interacting. Mahayana said, yeah, it is Avalokiteshwara sound, you are just listening to that, that's okay. Avalokiteshwara also keeps on listening to that. He is called by that name because he is constantly being aware of the world.
There's a full book on this called Nada Yoga, and Ajahn Sumedho has written the preface of that book. Forward of that book. It's book by some Indian guy on yoga. But there's a full book on.
Actually, in fact, Sudhakar has also given the same link. The book is The Law of Attention, Nath Yoga, and Way to Inner Vigilance, and it's by Edward Salim Michael. He has 4 chapters of this book dedicated to Nath Yoga. And there was somewhere mentioned that Ajahn Sumedho referred some of the monks to read those chapters for Sound of Silence. And the book has very brief forward from Ajahn Sumedho also. And that's what Sudhakar is saying, that there are the 4 chapters in this book. The author goes into detail on how listening to this leads to various depths of understanding. It sounded like following breath in Goenkaji's tradition. And also Sudhakar is validating your experience also, that in my last 45-day course I was listening to Sound of Silence for some time. The experience is very different from the casual listening at home. Frequency changing with state of mind is new. I haven't seen this. That's
क्या करना होता है?
कुछ नहीं करना, जस्ट अवेयर. अभी बात कर रहा हूँ तो वो आवाज़ सुनी जा रही है, तो मैं उसे मना तो कर नहीं सकता कि भाई चुप हो जा. बात भी हो रही है, it just keeps your attention, one part of the attention in the unsullied atmosphere, so you can handle things. हाँ, बदलता रहता है. वो तो साउंड तो चेंज होती रहती है, बट है हमेशा पड़ी रहती है. So it is somewhere in between.
And Sudhakar also points to one book, possibly short book, I don't know. The book's title is Inner Listening, Meditation of Sound of Silence, and it's from Ajahn Namu. It's available online in the PDF form.
तो लिंक्स भेज देना भाई, इनको भी देखते हैं. इस शाम के इन दोनों बुक्स के लिंक भेज देना है. जस्ट फॉर अवर क्यूरियोसिटी, वी लाइक टू सी क्या करते हैं. There was a phase when I was really concerned क्या हो रहा है.
I think Ajahn Sumedho, he started to teach this as one of the Kushalopayas in his retreats, but now he has stopped it because of the same thing, that people started to make this as a technique rather than just as a Kushalopaya.
But in general,
he mentions it, still mentions it, but not in a formal retreat.
In our formal retreat also he mentioned it just casually.
Casually.
He didn't say that you have to listen.
Yeah,
you are not
but
have to listen.
in some of the instructions on meditation, he used to say those things, that you can start from looking at your breath or your sound of silence or posture.
आजकल वो meditation instruction अब देते नहीं है ना.
हाँ.
He doesn't.
पुरानी recording जो medical
उसमें है,
sessions हैं,
उनमें है. You can start from there.
okay, coming back to slide number 6, this is a question that can you know that you are in awareness? Then if you really try to find out whether I am in awareness or not, again this becomes like trying to grasp on the things, and our mind generally tries to again have the certainty that at this moment I am listening to sound of silence, then am I in awareness? So again, this is this just our habits of trying to find certainty.
The limits of language actually. So I was Jaipur, so I was reading a book in which he had made a comment of a famous German philosopher, Wittgenstein, I don't know, one of the top philosophers of 20th century. He says the notion of self is a shadow cast by grammar. It's a problem of language. We can't say there is seeing, we always say I am seeing.
Even Alan Watts says that.
So we have discussed that so often, I am not seeing. There is no I involved in seeing. It is absolutely impersonal process. I am not hearing. It is absolutely impersonal process. If a sound is there, hearing will be there. You try your best. You will have to do all kind of effort to prevent hearing. Your eyes are open, seeing will be there. You try your best. So it's all impersonal processes. So awareness is an impersonal thing, but we try to say, okay, there must be somebody who is aware. Somebody must be there who is seeing, yaar ye kya hai? ऐसा थोड़ा होता है. Yeah, this is our language problem. We are used to saying that. There is an awareness. There is no I who is aware. Yeah, that's a very tricky one. That takes a lot of time to really come to terms with it.
And coming to slide number 7, so this was the first time I heard this thing from Ajahn Svedha.
He
found this talk very interesting.
He rarely mentions, but I don't know how he on that day remembered Lumpur Dun.
Yeah, and in fact, in this talk itself, we mentioned that he has used this reflection doing walking meditation. So again, he says that this is a reflection of an enlightened master. Again, don't try to analyze it by saying that whether this is right or whether this is what really Buddha meant or not. But see this more as a reflection of someone who has understood Four Noble Truths. In general, I listened to this, it was very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
And
It says the mind going out is the cause of suffering. It's quite obvious. It's quite obvious. वो तुमको वो तो is not according to the scripture तो सारे फंस जाते तो उनको शायद काफी क्रिटिसिज्म झेलना पड़ा होगा कि तुम कई चीजें ऐसी पढ़ाते हो स्क्रिप्चर में नहीं है टॉक दे देते. So he therefore starts with a caveat. ये सब मत कहना कि बुद्धा ने कहाँ कहा था. So this must have been some monk, I don't know, we have not heard about him. Did you heard?
actually, we heard one case where he was doing meditation retreat.
लुम्पुर डून का सुना हुआ था तुमने?
नहीं, लुम्पुर डून का नहीं सुना.
हमने तो सुना ही था नाम. वहाँ जाके सुना.
In fact,
and he's talking so high about him.
I searched on the net. I could find a list of YouTube talks, but they were all in Thai language.
But this was there. You could locate this Lumpur Dun?
Yeah,
Google में है.
Google पे है.
He has passed away, is it?
He has passed away. And all I could get any study material was this YouTube talks, but they were in Thai language, so can't really understand the language. So I'll just read out these reflections. So these are the Four Noble Truths and their corresponding versions as per Lumpur Dun. The first noble truth that there is dukkha, Lumpur Dun's version is that the mind, the chitta that we send out through senses is the cause of suffering. Trying to look outward to get something through desire is like sending chitta outside. This happens when we start thinking, getting caught in thoughts, thinking process or habits, or seeking distractions through senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, is like sending this chitta outside. This becomes cause of suffering. All the tendencies to distract ourselves, get away from suffering, to find happiness or security, safety or just relief from suffering of some sort. We have to go out, we have to think, look at something, listen to something, smell something, taste something. And this is this going out is what which causes the suffering. And coming to second noble truth, origin of suffering is the attachment to desire. The Lumpur Dun's version is that the result of sending the chitta outside is dukkha.
She first gives the cause and then gives the effect.
And same is for the next two Noble Truth, the cessation of suffering. When the mind or consciousness or chitta knows itself, that's the path for Magga. That's knowing of emptiness, empty consciousness is like this. And the fourth truth, the result of consciousness or chitta knowing itself is a cessation, nirodha of suffering.
Actually, it's following a logical procedure, ना cause effect, cause effect. और normal जो हमारा enunciation है, उसमें effect पहले दिया हुआ है, there is suffering. Then बाद में cause दिया हुआ है, this is the cause of suffering. Then there is cessation of suffering, which is the effect of following the path. He has changed it. When a person is enlightened, he doesn't have to follow the literal words.
And maybe that would have been common at that time. We don't know.
Because tradition में तो वही चला रहा है ना, Four Noble Truths. ये तो बिल्कुल I heard for the first time that somebody has even put this in a different way. There are people who have put that in terms of happiness. No, there is rather than saying there is suffering, say there is happiness. There is a cause of unhappiness. So this way they have put it in that manner, but which is quite in tune. This is totally different take on it.
Do you think हमारे tradition में भी जो अंतर्मन होने को, it's like not chitta, sending the chitta outside, but
Being within the
within. And I think I still remember that one phrase from Swamiji when we went to Lucknow. When I asked him, we're talking about Sajagta, and he said, how do we do it? Then he says, turn around. That was his two-word answer, and that still sticks to me in my mind. Says, turn
since
around.
we are looking around,
Looking outside, just look inside.
So coming to slide number 9 again, Ajahn Sumedho says that the encouragement is to just be aware. And consciousness is not something that which comes and goes. It's not like sankhara. It's just here and now. But if we try to send consciousness outside and we want to figure the things out, then we just get caught in this state of confusion. And again, Ajahn Sumedho mentions his own personal experience that during his early years of monastic life, when he was with Ajahn Sumedho, and that's in general true for us, that we carry this attitude sometimes that I am the one who is ignorant and someone else is an enlightened master. He knows better than me about myself, and he can guide me on what I should do or what I should not do. And that's where Ajahn Sumedho mentions the smartness of Ajahn Chah is that whatever way he'll do, he'll make sure.
What is your last language?
Yeah. And so Ajahn Chah will not play this game. Every time Ajahn Sumedho try to project, you know me better, he would have some skillful means to get him to look at the state of the mind. Because it's created state, we created this sense that I am the student, I am the enlightened one. This is thinking, this is sankhara. So again, I think the emphasis of Ajahn Sumedho is just pointing to our tendencies to look out for someone who can help us. rather than just being able to see with in awareness what's going on, and just be okay with what's going on. And then in slide number 11, he comes out with this thing that all thoughts are sankharas. They arise and pass away, and we can't trust them in terms of grasping the thinking process as a means of enlightenment. And again, in slide number 2, there is this reference to Sati Sampajanya. That's the knowing of Sabbe Sankhara Anicca, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. All conditioned sankharas are impermanent. All the Dhamma is non-self, Anatta, unformed, uncreated, unconditioned, here and now. And the way Ajahn Sumedho again says is that Sati Sampajanya is the ability to awaken, to put ourselves in the position of this openness, this attentive listening in the present moment. And we let this universal wisdom manifest rather than we're trying to really think or control the things.
I think we will stop here because it's काफी लंबा है ना, we need to reflect on it. I think we want to discuss this trust and monastery business with everybody, all the people in our Sunday group.
Sure.
So is Arpan is online or no?
Arpan is not online, sir. But there is this, I'll just cover this one question from the last slide when from the slide number 10, when the question from Shilesh is that isn't it better to be like a student? Possibly the way Ajahn Sumedho refers to student is that if we like to be student, there is always seeking out to a teacher who will guide us. And I think at some initial stages it's fine when we are getting guidance. For example, we have all have some sense of understanding of what Buddha taught, what Goenkaji taught, what Ajahn Sumedho teaches. But it's really about whether we get stuck at this stage of being a student always and always trying to seek and get the certification from somebody that you tell me whether I'm doing it right or not, right or wrong. And that's, I think, the point which Ajahn Sumedho wants to refer to that. Okay, so as sir mentioned that we'd like to use probably next 15 minutes for discussion related with trust.
Arpan was not online today?
No, he wasn't. You have a call sir?
Yeah, I know.
8:15 हो ही रहे. We can call him.
Yeah. If he's not on, then I'll speak. But उनसे देख पूछ लिया. फोन करके मैंने उसको मैसेज किया. कल शाम को तो बात हुई थी. He was saying his fever is less. Otherwise, I can share whatever I know. Because there are some things which were to be shared, and we need your inputs in that. चलो आप. ये language.
Switched over, sir. Switched off.
Yeah. So maybe he's not like that. Or sleeping. These are all things are possible. So he's not well, just sleep.